Right, it's 5:30 in the morning. I've got my Nital. I don't take any of the poisons that some of these demented F-wits take. You don't want to poison your brains anymore with the poisons that they prescribe. Do you now? Well, a lot of you don't really care. But no, I'm keeping my faculties. Everything's natural with me. So I've also got my bedtime nightcap. Try and get into a routine. And yes, if I get any more anonymous calls, unknown calls ringing me, or like whatever, like Dan from Police Abusing Powers, I'm going to report that to YouTube. So I'm going to report Dan. It's quite interesting, isn't it, Dan? I got an unknown number ringing me straight afterwards. You text me after I made that live stream saying, oh, I deleted that text. I've kept the other one for evidence, but you text me to say, could you let me know what you said in the last 10 minutes? I was having a dump. But rather interestingly, within that time limit, I had an unknown call. Yes, an unknown harassing call. But, and you're telling me to go to bed when you were the one who texted me at 1:30 in the morning. Well, don't worry, I'm keeping that for my evidence. You're a screwball. And definitely keeping that. But, yeah. No, I've had unknown numbers ringing me, people watching me in the early hours. Why don't you go to bed? Why would you? But anyway, I've covered all of that. This is just a documentation thing. So, it helps me. It helps me. The title of the live stream is just a very quick one. It's just when the narcissist or the sociopath run out of their narcissistic supply, or as another guy said, their harem garage. They're panicking. They're panicking because it's very tiring for the narcissist, because for so long they have to keep up an act. It's an act. It's a mask. Behind it is something very ugly and demonic. It's same for sociopaths, narcissists, and of course psychopaths. But that's the extreme end, is the psychopath. But sociopaths and narcissists work in, the same way when it comes to supply. And they're getting angry and tired because they can't keep up the act anymore. They've got to run around trying to make it look like they're trying to help the vulnerable person, trying to keep up the act. And then when they start, it's very ugly when they start breaking down and flipping the tables over. And you've just seen the evidence of it. I've been in a suicidal state this evening, crying in a bad way. No, you saw it. You can hear it for yourself in the live stream. My partner screaming. Well, he wasn't screaming, shouting, not on that occasion, but he was just getting unpleasant. And in a voice message, not taking any responsibility. Of course not. No, they never think they're in the wrong. That's how I know I'm not a narcissist, because obviously I've looked in the mirror and I've really said, are you a narcissist? And of course, a narcissist doesn't do that. It's a sickness. They never think they're in the wrong. They flip the tables over, but that's what you see Dan has done. And his narcissistic supply, you'll see a link in the description. He's crying in a suicidal state to the very channel supporters who have bullied me, and I've got evidence of them. He's copying the phrases I've been using in my live streams because he's obviously obsessed with me in some way. Why watch me otherwise? Why? Oh, someone's come on to watch me and then they've gone off. You see, I can see how many people are watching me at any given time. And in the early hours, I can sometimes have up to 15 people watching me in the early hours. But I'm not going to tell them to go to sleep. Send a text message, go to sleep. No. What's your problem? All I'm doing is exposing your lies, exposing you as grifters. Look it up, by the way. A grifter or a shill. But there are many types of narcissists and sociopaths. At the end of the day, they can take many different forms. They don't have to be boyfriends or girlfriends. They can be anyone who's a predator. They're looking for their prey, and there are plenty in the church, let me tell you that. I just remember the Freemasons saying to Jane Jubilant from the Jesus Army, I don't like to see people taking advantage of Bryony. I think he'd already shoved his tongue in my mouth at that point. I was 19, he was old enough to be my father, and I was working with him in the garden centre. And we know that, funnily enough, the Jesus Army are involved in human trafficking. They go to Brighton. I mean, I don't mean to be horrible about the Jesus Army, but I've been on the bus with them, and when I used to support them with helping the homeless, then I ended up in that situation. They wear those great big jackets, Jesus Army, and they go onto the street with soup and stuff. And 20 odd years ago, I went to the big house up the road, up in Blatchington, up the road from our house. It was a big, old, disused, used to be a dormitory. And I used to like going there. But it's funny that the Freemason who shoved his tongue in my mouth and told my mum in our kitchen that he wanted to impregnate me. I was 19, he was 55. And yet he was saying that to Jane Jubilant, no offence, Jane, but from the Jesus Army. And she said, neither do I. And yet, in a way, though, in a funny sort of way, you know, because Christian women can be a bit, yeah. She said to me, your skirt was a bit short, Bryony, which is a very cheeky thing to say to an adult woman. I go into the changing rooms, and every time I put on a skirt, I bend over and look under in the mirror to make sure that I can't see my underwear. That's not a skirt that's too short. But because in the Jesus Army, at the Abundant Grace House, the women wear long skirts because of the humility and everything. And I respect that, because it's, you know, it's like the monks, you know, and stuff. But it's humility. It's showing humility and, you know, covering up your flesh. But this is what I mean, though. The Freemason and Jane Jubilant from the Jesus Army, they want a piece of me. And at the end of the day, nobody's saying, Bryony, what do you want, love? Because the Freemason had said to me, I'd like to be like a surrogate father to you. And he shoved his tongue in my mouth and said to Mum in the kitchen he wanted to impregnate me. So, a 55-year-old saying that to a 19-year-old ain't great. But when I left the garden centre, I then went on to do care work. And I've got so many anecdotes, of course, but I did care work at the Clifton House to begin with. And I was only there for 3 weeks. It was hell. The first time I'd ever seen a naked lady, an old lady. Oh no, hang on. Yeah, they didn't properly train me. No one had even. I'd done cleaning before in the old people's homes, but no one told me that they had dementia, which is quite serious, really, when you think about it. They're not just elderly; they had dementia, so that made them more vulnerable. The manageress didn't train me. But the matron, oh my gosh, the Irish dragon of a matron and her sister, you know how you have matron and sister, you call them matron and sister, they work side by side. Her sister was like a clone of her. They looked and sounded the same. I'm not joking and I'm not exaggerating. She was like a clone of her. Just make you wonder now. And they were as vile as each other. She was such a dragon. What was her name? Joyce. Was it Joyce? Joyce. The matron and her sister. She burst in my first time I'd ever seen a naked lady, a naked old lady, or anyone who's naked apart from my mother. I was washing her on the commode and she was completely naked. Now, no one had trained me. No one had said, oh, she might get cold if she's completely naked. I was trying to do what I would want done for me if I was in their position, but I was nervous. She burst in, threw the door open, vroom, said, what on earth? Said, that poor woman, what are you doing to her? What on earth are you doing to her? Horrible Irish dragon. I jumped out of my skin, shaking. Of course, I didn't know that I suffered from PTSD and trauma back then. Of course, it's taken up until my 30s to learn that I suffer with trauma and anxiety and attachment and all that. And I felt like saying, what does it look like? But I was so nervous as she left me alone. And the woman had dementia, but she looked at me, even though she was the one who was, poor woman. I mean, she was an elderly woman and she'd just been humiliated herself because this Irish dragon has just flung the door open. And what are you doing? And she looked at me. She could see I was nervous and scared. So even though she had dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever, she looked at me. I could see in her eyes. She looked at me as if to say, I'm so sorry that she's just done that to you. But yeah, the carers, there was one who wouldn't leave me. She was non-stop bullying me all night on a night shift. She was pushing and pushing and pushing my buttons. And it's just a shame in hindsight that back then I would not snap. I wouldn't snap. That's the problem. If you are an empath and you're hiding it in years of abuse, you're not going to snap. You're not going to snap. Yes, I've shown it a million times and I'll show it a million times again. You're not going to snap. You're holding it in. So I wanted to snap the whole time I was doing that night shift. I was actually in my mind saying, Bryony, why won't you shout it back at them? Why won't you? Because I was programmed and conditioned. Social engineering. And so basically, when I bumped into that dirty old man, Freemason, and at one point, and this was after I left the job. I was only there for 3 weeks. She gave me my last check and she said, "Well, your work here was, well, rather, well, you know." Yeah, not yours. I know you shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but I mean, my mother died of cancer, but she was a good woman. And this one was just an evil. But I wrote a letter telling her exactly what I thought of her. I told the Freemason, and he said, "Oh, good girl, well done." And I did, because I wouldn't say it. So, but I'm good with letters. I'm good with words, without being a big head. But she wasn't expecting that, because it really put her in her place. And then she died of cancer. So really, Dan from Police Abusing Powers, at 1:30 in the morning, sending me a nasty text when you've already seen me suicidal, yet you've had a stroke. You might want to be careful. I'm being serious. I just thought, oh dear, poor Dan. But you might be one of those types that's bringing it on yourself. Anyway, unlike the empaths. But anyway, because you know Rolf Harris. I mean, you know what's happened to him. He can't eat, and he's got cancer of the. Now, I cried. I genuinely cried, and I feel so upset about Rolf Harris and the state that he's in. Because cancer is not something, it shouldn't happen to anyone, regardless of what they've done. These things are evil things. And I'm not, I'm not one of those people who says, "Oh, you deserve what you get." I could have knocked someone out in the psychiatric unit. She was a witch, and she said, "I could give you all cancer," and I could have killed her, as you can imagine, because she was a witch. But anyway, yeah. But no one deserves whatever evil they've done. But seriously, if you are going to go out of your way to target vulnerable people, you will make yourself ill, and what goes around comes around. That's all I'm saying. Why would you do that? Why would you target? Why? I'll tell you why, and I'm about to explain why. I said I'd make this quick. It's already been nearly 20 minutes. Well, I just have to have a little rant, don't I? I'm having my nightcap because I haven't been sleeping at night because of the stress. So I'm going to have this and then I'm going to go to sleep. But I do think it's something that needs to be said because it's a warning, and I want to help other victims of this kind of narcissistic abuse. Even my mother was proud of me that I stood up to my eldest sister one time. In her house, she got on top of me and put her hand over my mouth. And she was saying, "I know it's because you've got a problem. I know it's because you've got a problem." She's got a mental. I won't go there because I'm not going to talk about it on YouTube, but I'll just say her husband knows what she's like. She was kicked out at 16, and people warned her that she'd lose me as a sister. She's a landlady. They've got about 3 houses between them, and I would not sleep in her house. I would not. Because I need to think of my health. She called my mother an effing bitch through the letterbox. My mother died of a rare cancer. She's chosen worldly things over her sister, and she's going to be very sorry. And that's why I'm not even going to open text messages from her. But it's rather interesting that she started to text me whilst I've been going through all this narcissistic abuse. Yes, Tanya. Very interesting that. But I'm not going to open them. I'm not going to open the text messages. She doesn't know about my YouTube channel. She shouldn't anyway. But interestingly, Darren had access to my mobile phone, and he's gone round manipulating everyone. He's going to end up in prison himself. So he can scream and shout about, why are you putting my name up there? It's very serious, Darren. I warned you. You can't do this. But yeah, his narcissistic supply has run out, and that's why he's panicking as well. All of them are. They go round, they go everywhere. They're predators. Preying on vulnerable, decent, honest people like me, who's in so much pain that you even got your mother to be rather unpleasant towards me, didn't you, Darren? Yeah, well, she says she worries about you. She said to me she worries about you, Darren. I'm not surprised. She's going to be worried if you end up in prison. You're going around, my son was sent to you. My son. Helen Hipperson was right, and she's a nasty piece of work. But she's right. Mocking your mother, saying, oh, my son was sent to you. What am I, your fucking project? Well, you'll go to prison for it. And I won't cry for you. I'll be crying for myself. Because that will validate all the pain that you've caused me. You could have been arrested more times than that, Darren. I've been protecting you. Because that's what women do. That's what they do. But I'm not going to do it anymore. So thanks for pushing me, all the other ones who are insecure. They're going to end up killing themselves. A stroke, cancer, heart attack, diabetes, heart disease. It's all caused by stress. But those of us who are good people, caring people, decent people, that stress has been caused by someone else. Cancer is an intoxication. It's over intoxication. That's what cancer is. And these little trolls are little cancers. All these little trolls are little cancers. But their narcissistic supply is going to run out. I'm making a few people angry because I'm speaking the truth. Because you were hoping that I would be so vulnerable that you could make a joke out of me. And you're finding out that I'm a lot stronger than you thought. Well, Tina Chaver was right, wasn't she? You're stronger than you think. I sent her this, and one of the moderators from Police Abusing Powers mocked me over it because they're jealous. I've had my face in the paper. Your mother would be so ashamed of you. Ian Broadhurst, one of the Police Abusing Powers moderators that Dan passed to me, like all these other parasites. But anyway, they're not worth my airtime. But yes, no, I have to say, I just wrote it on my hand so I wouldn't forget. It was interesting that Dan used the same phrase that the operatives use. We're going round in circles and hanging up, because that's the encoded Masonic, social engineered, Tavistock trained phrases that they're trained in, but they're like puppets, the ones that use it. But Dan's decided to copy it. He's decided to copy it. He's been doing his homework and taking notes. What has Bryony been saying now? Libel. What I've been saying about you is libelous, slanderous. Again, copying me because I said that they slandered me in the Herald. Because Princess Angela, did she go to bed or has she been playing with her My Little Pony? Yes, your little minions, Dan from Police Abusing Powers. Because I said that I had been slandered in the Herald after a welfare check on Beachy Head. I now wonder, are some of your followers just degenerates, or are they police officers? Because Princess Angela is like that silly little girl, PC Soph. I can imagine them all just playing with their toys with each other. And she said this, and she said that. 31 years ago, we actually had a WPC as a lodger in my mother's home after my grandmother died. A real WPC, a woman police officer. And we both said, me and my mother said, how safe we felt having a policewoman in the house. I was about 9 years old. Not these silly little children who don't even know the law. Even the 7-foot male ones with bald heads. Darren's threatening me with them. Quick, get the nappies out because they're going to wet themselves. The feelings police. Because we can't take responsibility for our actions, can we, Dan? Can we, Darren? Can we? Sociopaths, narcissists, people who are running out of supply. They run out of their narcissistic supply. They look for the next best thing that they can find. The next one. Who else can I use? Who else can I use to big up and cover my tracks? You're panicking because you can't cover your tracks anymore. And that's why you want to be careful, Dan, because people like you, if you say that you've had a stroke, well, you can't cover your tracks anymore, then can you? Because other people who've been, and one of them did comment that they too had been a victim of police abusing powers. So other people are going to know. And I'm going to find out who else has been mistreated by Darren. I left a voice message for Gurmit this evening. Gurmit, your friend Darren, and I saw how you treated her, and you used her as part of your narcissistic supply. Even if she's a narcissist herself, it doesn't matter. Evangelistic, Christian, whatever, I couldn't care less. She used to be a Sikh. But this is what you do. You go around to women saying, would you marry me? How about me? Just to see how they'll react. Because, if you're a predator and you're preying on someone who's lost their mother, who's already been through emotional abuse, who's opened themselves up like a sore wound. You said you wanted a child with me, a baby. We were going to move in together, and your mum and dad would like a grandchild. Well, if your sister and your brother have taken the, what shall we call it, the jibby jab, they won't be able to have children anyway. So it's a shame, because if you've been abusing me to the extent that you have, which you have, It doesn't look like they're ever going to have grandchildren then. Because I'll tell you what happens to the narcissist and the sociopath, and it's taken me half an hour to get this to this point. What happens is they basically have done all their gaslighting and using, and they've used up their supply, their harem garage, their supply. And then word gets around. All these abused empaths spread the word. Because people aren't stupid, they're going to find out sooner or later. Then the narcissist or the sociopath goes into hiding. They're secretly looking for their next. Who else can I go to though? But eventually, you're just going to end up like these idiots in the pub. You know, you see them all. I mean, I'm not being judgmental here. They're not all like this. I'm not saying that all men in pubs are losers. So obviously, that would be a terrible thing for me to say. I'm not saying that. No, of course not. Just in the same way that there's nothing wrong with being drunk. I've never been drunk, but I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it or anything like that. And I'm not being judgmental. I'm saying that there are men who end up in pubs drinking themselves to death. And a lot of them have gone through their lives abusing people. Women will do it as well. I'm not being sexist. I'm saying 9 times out of 10, it's men. Because that is statistically, that's the way it is. That's why women are built the way they are, vulnerable, and men are men. And then along comes Bryony, young woman. And I've had men say to me, "You're very brave just to be in this pub on your own." Men who are old enough to be my father. And one of them, a northerner, he said to me, this is about 8 years ago, he said to me, I got a thumbs up at that point. Thank you very much. That's nice. I'm not looking for likes. As I said, I could have a bazillion dislikes and no likes at all, and I'd still be saying the same things. But there was a man who was old enough to be my father some years ago who said I was brave to be in there. And then there was this northern guy in his 50s. And he said to me, the way he was talking about women in a derogatory way. He was looking at women, all the young, good-looking women, with all their legs and bits out, looking nice. And he was eyeing them up, and he seemed really slimy. But he's, doing what men do, just eyeing up women. He was just sitting there on his own. And do you know what he said? He said he didn't know how many children he'd fathered. And I said how disgusting he was. And he said, "It's your vaginas." That's how he spoke. Do you know something? He wasn't expecting this. I shamed him in the pub. I said, this is about 8 years ago, something like that, 8 or 9 years ago, something like that, in Wetherspoons. And I said, I said, I haven't seen my father since I was a child, and you're disgusting. I was doing this for all the children, the grown-up adults that he's fathered, that he doesn't know or care about, that the women who have produced obviously don't care either. Takes 2 to make a baby. You're both responsible for using contraception. And I was doing it for them, and he looked so embarrassed and ashamed. But all those men that end up on their own, sitting in a pub or on a park bench. I know there are women out there who do this, and it's not all just in romantic relationships. It's any relationship. If they run out of their narcissistic supply, this is what's going to happen, mark my words. Those of us who like to be on our own, the empaths, it's because we can't stand being around people because of years of narcissistic abuse. There's a difference. Do you see where I'm going with this? There's a difference. I love talking to myself. I could be talking to myself now and I'd still enjoy it. I talk to animals. I get more sense out of them. And man's best friend, a dog. My sister's German Shepherd. When my eldest sister was abusing me, I burst into tears. My sister's German Shepherd, put his head on my shoulders. You know why? Because my mother used to tell her, stop shouting at him, you'll hurt his ears. They have sensitive hearing. And he was suffering from doggy depression. Every time I went round there, he'd chew things up. He'd be under the table. Every time I went round there, hiding under the table with his legs like this and his head down. Dogs suffer from depression. He wasn't getting enough walks. My sister didn't appreciate me enough. As I said, one time I stood up to her. She climbed on top of me on a chair. It wasn't normal. And she put her hands over my mouth. And she was saying, "You got a problem, you've got a problem, you've got a problem." Coming from my sister, who doesn't think she suffers with mental health. So yes, Dan from Police Abusing Powers, yes, I'm well rehearsed in it. Make no mistake, I've had it all my life since I was a baby. Yes, I absorbed the violence of my parents. Do you know what Darren's been now done? He's gone around telling me that he's gone around telling people I suffer from trauma all these years, and then he's turned around and said, oh, by the way, he once lost it with me and called the police when he said, you can't use the phrase, turned round and said. Yeah, that's how demented Darren has been. He told people I suffered with trauma, then dumbed it down by saying, well, my mum and my dad have had the odd argument. Darren, I don't think your dad has had, well, as far as my understanding is, I don't think your dad has had his hands around your mother's throat, tried to kill her, had your baby sister on his lap with your mum thinking of bashing his head in with a rolling pin, and your sister being the thing that stopped her. I don't think that that's happened. Because if it had, they wouldn't be together. So all this, she's attention seeking, and now Darren's ill. Now Darren's can't work. And you showed me that letter from your doctor, really. What did you say to your doctor? What did you say to my doctors? Trust has to be earned. You said to me at the start of my relationship, with Darren, he said he felt honoured. He felt honoured that I was sharing my heart and soul with him, and he's done all these unthinkable things. Left me to sleep rough, had me arrested for disagreeing with him. Well, you know what? Juliet is just what I need. She is like Iris, my mother's best friend, who said, there's no shortage of them. There are a lot of them out there. Yes. My mother had them. Yeah. So, but I tell you what's going to happen to you. You're going to end up on a park bench or in a pub or in your own home, rotting away, feeling depressed, feeling suicidal. A bit like the video that Dan shared me where he's crying to the very channel supporters that he's used to abuse me. Have a look in the link in the description in that last video, which I'm going to use to report to YouTube. And that's what's going to happen. There'll be a young lady in the pub, a strong young lady in years to come, In years to come, mark my words, in years to come, there'll be a young lady like me walking into a pub. That's me 20 years ago. In another 20 years' time, what will happen to these sociopaths and narcissists is they'll end up so lonely. Many of the men will be in the pubs, drinking their tears and sorrows down a bottomless glass, or whatever other means. They'll just be lonely. There'll be a woman who walks into that pub. Young woman, maybe stunning. She may be out of their league or something like that. And she'll walk in there and she'll be strong, sit on her own. I used to sit on my own in there, happily on my own, because I like my own company. Just have a cup of tea, like being on my own. Of course, Darren knows this. Just like the Cavendish Hotel that have banned me. Suddenly, well, not banned me, but cancelled my reservation, even though they've had thousands of pounds out of me. You didn't say, Darren didn't say anything to PC Soph. He just stood back and watched her bullying me. And he went, she's not aggressive. But Darren himself was afraid of PC Soph. But PC Soph, she's so thick and stupid, she even apologised to Darren, even though he's been arrested and he's used the police to bully me. And you didn't like it when Darren didn't like it when PC Harriet called him a knob. The most frightening thing for him is having his name, Darren Stewart Webb, on my live stream. And you heard him threaten me. You heard it. He threatened me with police. He threatened to report my live stream. He's not feeling bad about all the terrible things he's done to me. But he'll end up an elderly old man on a bench when his mum and dad have died. In some years to come, he'll be an old man. You think you had an experience of a relationship by being with me, Darren? Oh, he's finally got a girlfriend. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. And having any kind of impairment is no excuse. I don't care what Eben says. You've used the Bible to abuse me, to make me suicidal, to manipulate me, to emotionally. This is the devil's work. Screw it. I'll always have faith in my Heavenly Father. Don't worry about that, but that's between me and him. But the thing is, with the narcissist, if the Bible is their thing, they're going to use that to manipulate in every way they can to big themselves up, whether it's to find someone that they can say, oh, this person is into the Bible, she's screwed up, or use this person to use the Bible to look self-righteous. It's the devil's work. Fuck you. Oh, I'm not allowed to use the word fart around Darren, though. Oh, you used the F word. You used the F word when I was standing up to you, Darren. He was going, puck, puck, puck. I know, it's very funny, really. But bollocks. It's all bollocks. And I'm done with it. You know, you can tire out the empath too. That's it. But, yeah, welcome to Eastbourne. Yeah. Welcome to sunny Eastbourne. Narcissist is saying, yes, it is Eastbourne people that are nuts. Whilst doing a smear campaign. Tell Gurmit that Bryony was the one who brought me to Yahweh. No. You threatened me with the police. You called the police on me for disagreeing with you with the Bible. That is demented. Call the police on her because she disagreed with me with the Bible. You got to use the name Yahweh. You got to. His name is sacred. I don't disagree with these things. No, I don't disagree with them, but using it to abuse me and call the police and all this kind of thing. Like that guy in Asda said, you give them one. He said he has the 3 chance rule. Well, I think that's quite fair. But I gave Darren endless chances, and he just kept having me arrested, and it just got worse and worse. And I tell you something about the narcissist and the sociopath: they get worse with age. They get worse and worse. And that's why I'm warning you. You do care work with the elderly, you will see it. Where do you think the term grumpy old men comes from? The old ladies are the worst. I actually found it easier caring for the old men, but because women live longer than men, you don't get to see many elderly men. But the men are easier to deal with. But the miserable old ladies, the old hag in the scullery who was abusing me. My first day of work in the next care home, I was physically sick on my first day of work. In the same way that I was physically sick at Belmore Road, where I recorded a criminal on a tag threatening to beat me senseless. And at 6 a.m., 3 hours after I recorded her, and my 999 call, I was arrested on a fraud. Yes, on a fraud. And the CPS said that they threw the court papers out of court because I never received them. Why? Because they went to Elms Avenue, the accommodation I was keeping away from for my safety, when I had been self-funding the Citrus Hotel. When the police had terminated my calls when I reported a guest threatening to go in my room. Yes, that was at the Citrus Hotel on the 21st of October 2020. Self-funding for a couple of months to keep away from Elms Avenue. The court papers went to Elms Avenue. How funny is that? And the CPS threw it out that I never received them in April last year when I was kidnapped. Kidnapped at 6 a.m. in my pyjamas and my slippers. Because 3 hours later, I was sleep deprived, had been recording a criminal on a tag threatening to beat me up. And they wanted to convict me of me being beaten by the police during a welfare check on Beachy Head, dragged out of the Beachy Head pub because I was waiting to be served a cup of tea, crying for my dead mother. You're all going to be exposed and you're all shitting yourselves. And when shit hits the fan, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes, let's just put it that way. Because it will. Mark my words, it will. And that's what you're afraid of. That's why I'm getting some angry messages from Darren and Dan. And you're playing each other off, aren't you? Because Dan said to me when he was a nice person, remember? It's on your channel, Dan. When was it? The 20th of April this year? I wouldn't pass you to someone I didn't think would be able to help you, Bryony. One woman vigilante. And you were saying to me that if Darren cared about you, he would let you in his flat. And yet Darren said to me, see if Dan will take a phone call from me. You're all as bad as each other. There's a little bit of bitterness and jealousy. Anything that makes Bryony look good. I took a photograph of this and I sent it to Tina at the time when Tina said to me, ring me back. She was going to offer me all this help, 40 years of experience. Then she threatened me. But Dan doesn't really understand what a grifter is, you see. In the same way he doesn't believe that Juliet exists, my crucial lady witness, who's going through cancer treatment, who was attacked in the street by random drunks trying to help me. Dan did fuck all, but threatened me. Darren did fuck all, but watch me being attacked in the early hours. Evidence of licensee attacking me. Have a look. Blood left on my door. Police doing nothing. Darren might as well have got some popcorn. Didn't ask if I was okay. Didn't ring me up. Lies, 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 lies. In December, Mum wants to see you, Bryony, he said. Mum wants to see you. And hidden away in his bag was a Christmas card from his mum saying how wonderful he is. And just a few weeks ago, he was arrested for assaulting me over a set of keys we had cut. And the whole time I was in Eben's flat, I was squatting, which is why a couple of nights ago she walked in and I knew this would happen. She wasn't expecting to see me, so fuck you, Darren. Fuck you. Fuck you, leaving me a horrible message like this. I've never sworn so much in my life.
2. Saved messages. New messages. Right, since you've continued to put my name up my hand, I've now actually put in another report about it, okay? I've asked you not to do this. You keep putting up this stuff suggesting that I'm leaving voice messages as though some kind of message. Well, it's not. I'm ringing you because I'm trying to speak to you, but you won't pick up the phone, Bridie. You won't talk to me. All you keep doing is you keep interpreting it as some reason to keep putting more stuff up on YouTube. I've asked you to stop. So I've reported that now. Okay? So if you carry on doing this, Bridie, then, you know...
Threat.
You'll just bring...
Another threat.
On your head.
Another threat.
I've asked you not to do this. You're simply trying to treat me and frame me as someone who is responsible for all the ills that are going on. I'm not, Bryony. I've told you how much I struggle with things. I've told you about this. You know all this stuff.
Oh, here we go.
Why do you keep treating me as though I'm some kind of, attacker? I really don't know. Why do you keep treating it and putting up and displaying on your videos my name all the time?
It's called waking up.
Stop doing that. I don't put your name up like this anywhere publicly. Do not do it with my name. That's all I've asked you to do. All right? It's very simple, Barney. It's very simple. All you're trying to do is just...
Well, anyway,
message from...
that's just more threats, really. Report it then, because you see, that's what the narcissist does. They don't accept responsibility for what they've done. He just watched me being attacked in the early hours, didn't do anything, but he assaulted me himself in Eben's flat, where I've been squatting all this time. But the police wouldn't arrest him, you see. That's the interesting thing. They wouldn't initially arrest him. I recorded an hour and 40 minutes of a call handler saying a 101 police call handler saying they wouldn't terminate my call, and then they did. Then that same call handler answered my 999 call when Darren was assaulting me. They still wouldn't arrest him. I can't remember at what point they did. It's when he'd gone. I think it's when he'd gone away and came back, and I had to independently call the police and make a report. And it was a nice male police officer. Would you believe it was a male? It's interesting, isn't it? You'd expect the women to be understanding. Well, when they go through rape, I bet they will have a fucking hard time, because I didn't need any help. Women aren't reporting rape. I single-handedly put a man on a sex offenders register and 2 years in prison. And these are female police call handlers who won't deal with Darren Stewart Webb. But PC Soph said, I scratched her. Did you get that? Did you get that? Did you get that? Because they were twisting the handcuffs. They wouldn't get off me. They were deliberately causing me pain. So I acted in self-defense. They'd grab me, drag me out. The solicitor was on my side. I never saw the duty solicitor again. And then they slandered me in the Herald. This is where Dan is copying the phrases I've been saying, slanderous and libel and all that bollocks. Yes, that's the Herald, the Eastbourne Herald. This was, I believe, the Seaford Gazette. It's not the first time I've been mentioned in the Seaford Gazette. After this, I was either after this or before this, I can't remember, I had a front page headline in the Gazette saying school bullies nearly drove me to suicide, when my mother wrote into the newspaper saying how my time at the school had been hell. But interestingly, what the last 6 years that I've been through, it's been corruption and demented behaviour from sociopaths and narcissists. And they're everywhere in the system. And if you're in a relationship with one right now, with all the shit and the fuckwit idiots, everything that's going on in the system, everything, all the corruption, if you're in a relationship and they're using this corruption to abuse you, yeah, and to try and make it look like their mummy's good little boy when they're actually a 50-something-year-old, don't take it. Do not make excuses. Don't make excuses for their illness, their mental health condition, or their disability, because in a court of law, when it comes to coercive control, it doesn't wash. My point being about when I did care work is that Alzheimer's is not an excuse. They know what they're doing. My eldest sister worked with people, cared for people with severe learning disabilities. And she told one of them that they can wait. But he didn't wait. He defecated on the carpet as a dirty protest. So people who have impairments have some ability to know what they're doing. And believe me, Darren Stewart Webb is a very intelligent man, and he knows what he's been doing, and he's playing the victim, and his narcissistic supply has run out. It's run out, Darren, run out. You haven't done anything to prove to me. If you had done something, but no, you were hanging up on me. You were abusing me. You assaulted me. You haven't even taken responsibility for it. No, because you won't, because they don't. They never do. So they need to be held accountable for their crimes. It's no good them saying, oh, well, it's all in the court of heaven. Oh, using the Bible. No, fuck that. You have to take responsibility while you're here on this earth. And stop using the Bible to get away with your crimes, because someone has to stop it. You're reporting me for speaking out about what you've been doing, right? Same with Dan, same with all these others. And I'm telling you, what happens to the narcissist and the sociopath? They get worse with age. They end up more and more and more lonely and bitter and old. It's harder for them to cover it up. And the nice lady walks into the pub, sees a wrinkly, aging man. Oh, no. All right, darling. All right, darling. Show us your leg. Oh. Do you know what? That abusive relationship I had with that piece of shit who's in a relationship with Darren, one of Darren's friends. And she's extremely vulnerable because she was abused by her parents. She was abused by boyfriends. She had it all. And she's with that shit who came to my mother's funeral and then abused me. I tell you something, that piece of shit was married twice. One of his wives was found at the bottom of the stairs having taken an overdose. Do you know something? He almost had a go at me for that. One of his ex-wives took an overdose at the bottom, was found at the bottom of the stairs. He was taking it out on me. I just lost my mother. And he used crocodile tears. I don't know what's wrong with me. He used it all. And the internet cafe where I first met Darren was, funnily enough, 14, 15 years ago, where I did research on the internet about coercive control. So how interesting is that? I said it would never happen to me again. Boom, it's happened again, because there are so many of them out there. But Darren isn't heeding my warning. He didn't years ago. I said to Darren on the phone, I said, I could have you prosecuted for what you've done to me, but I haven't done anything. And then he changed his tune. He said, well, you'd better make sure that you find out what you haven't been saying is right and wrong. So all of a sudden he's like, You're a grown adult man. This is not a game. It's not a game. It's game up. But you've continued. It's 50-50. You have to come to the woman. If you're meant to be the headship, as the Bible says. Never had that 40th birthday. Do you know what he did, though? Here's a typical example. He said he'd try and get Lee Evans to wish me happy birthday. In the end, in Eben's flat, he got a second-hand DVD of Lee Evans. That's to make him feel better about his lies and bullshit. Fuck that. I've actually shaken Lee Evans' hand because I went all the way to the O2 on my own late at night, only just made it, his last show. Right at the top, ran down to the bottom of the stairs. Security telling me to stay away from the stage. I thought, fuck you. Climbed over the chairs, reached out my hand, and he was crawling along the stage and he shook my hand. I'm doing everything for myself. Darren, do you know what I did for Darren? I did something. I went out of my way to surprise him for his 50th birthday in a deluxe hotel room, covered in massive balloons, everything. And I could see the look of guilt in his eyes. I knew he'd done something. But I wanted to believe that he loved me. He looked tearful because he knew he'd been up to no good. This is what a sociopath and a narcissist does. They're doing evil in discreet. Where was he a month after that? Happy birthday in lights. Happy birthday, Darren, on the laptop. The balloons, the cake, the gifts in a deluxe hotel room with money I didn't actually have. But I thought I wanted to do something special for your 50th. So then a month later, where was Darren when I was arrested out of the psychiatric unit? 4 months earlier, I'd been dragged in there. Non-stop abuse. You've lost the best thing that's ever happened to you, Darren. You might go to prison for it. But you're sending me these nasty voice messages. Where was my 40th birthday surprise? Bollocks, 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 bollocks. Lies everywhere. So like social services. She doesn't engage. When I left so many voice messages for them, and they weren't turning up for appointments. And I've got them recorded, offering me a 1-bedroom flat before I was attacked again in my council accommodation that Tina Chave said I shouldn't be in by law. And she was going to give me her 40 years of experience. She was going to do this for me and she was going to do that, and then she didn't, and she didn't want to take another call from me. She even emailed me that she wouldn't take another call from me. Then I had a threatening email from her because I've been talking like this in my live streams. So what basically happens to the narcissist and the sociopath is they've used and abused they've used up all their narcissistic supply. And their children don't want to know. People don't want to know. Everybody knows they've had enough because the mask has slipped. So that's basically it, really. I thought, by the way, I thought it was rather interesting that Lisette, one of the nurses from Sussex Partnership on the Amberley ward where they tortured me, Lisette has heard of Joyce, the Irish dragon of a matron who abused me. Yes, she's heard of her. And even she said to me, "Oh, yes, I heard she could be a bit of a bitch." Because Lisette used to be a cleaner at Clifton House. My sister worked there as well, years before I was there. She had a reputation. Even my mother was no match for anyone, but even she said, "What a nasty piece of work." I was hiding in the car when she went and spoke to. We took one of their Westies. One of the residents had a dog there, a little Westie, and I missed my Ken Terrier, so I took her dog for a walk. And because I'd been gone longer than I should have done, I came back home and we played the voice messages, and it was either the Joyce the matron or her sister leaving endless voice messages saying, "Where is this poor lady's dog? Where are you, Bryony? Where are you?" And I went into a meltdown. So my mother said, "I'm so sorry, Bryony." She took the dog back on my behalf, but I was physically sick on my first day of work in the next care home. I vomited, violently sick, because the trauma did that to me. So that's exactly what happened at Belmore Road when I was being harassed by this demented nutcase, a criminal on a tag threatening to beat me up. I could have ended up with cancer. I was vomiting in the toilet. But PC Scott Franklin Lester arrested me. Yes, he arrested me, and the manager in Poundland said he likes bullying the vulnerable. I know. And PC Scott Franklin Lester, who's had 30 years of experience of policing and patrolling Eastbourne, said he had a narcissistic father. Is that a surprise? But do you know what? I said to him, "I'm so sorry." I said to him, "I'm so sorry." But he fraudulently kidnapped me along with Serco and the human global trafficking scam that's got millions of pounds put into this human trafficking scam that the government supports. Serco, yes. And the CPS threw it out that I never received court papers because they went to Elms Avenue. Court papers, not real court papers. We're talking about the legal fiction court papers, the fraudulent ones, where there's no wet ink signature, no embossed stamp, no, there was no warrant. I mean, a police constable under common law showing you your that holding up their phone and saying, "I have a warrant for your arrest. Here's my proof." A mobile phone is not a warrant, PC Scott Franklin Lester, and you kidnapped me 3 hours after I recorded a criminal on a tag threatening to beat me up, yes. And I was in my pyjamas and slippers, and what did I say, Scott? Yes, I said, Roll on the Nuremberg trials. Roll them on. And you looked a bit scared, Scott. But funnily enough, John Alexander Patterson used to say, put them all in the wood chipper and feed them to the pigs, which used to upset me. But to be honest, you all get what you deserve, because if you are going out of your way, you've taken an oath. Like the Masons, have you read their oath? Have you heard how frighteningly graphic the oath is that the Masons take? If they break that oath, how satanic and serious it is. It's like something out of the Middle Ages. But it's really, really disgusting. Well, the Masons, just like the doctor who takes a Hippocratic oath, and the police, they all take their oaths. Yes, well, I think Andy Devine was right about one thing. There'll be a lot of people throwing themselves under buses, but narcissists and sociopaths, they have their supply. And that supply is like this at the start, and then it ends up gradually getting like this. And then there's no one left to turn to. And that's what scares them. When the truth comes out, it's the most dangerous thing you can do is to speak the truth. I'm loving it. And I'm really enjoying seeing them get angry and trying to subtly manipulate me into a... It doesn't work. It doesn't work. I just expose it for what it is. Obviously, I'm not well. I've lost my mother. I've got no one else. I've been through all these heinous crimes. I've had these heinous crimes committed against me and my human rights and civil liberties. I'm a vulnerable, homeless woman. I've lost my mother. I've got no one. I'm carrying all this pain. Of course I'm going to get angry. Of course I'm going to swear. Of course I'm going to break. Because unlike you, fuckwits, I am human. It's normal. Anyway, I have been talking. Wow, I said I'd keep this short. I think I'm going to have to change the title a bit. I said a quick word. It's been an hour and 12 minutes. But it's obviously generating a little bit of interest. I'm amazed at how many people watch my live streams, even if it was just a bunch of trolls. They've obviously, like, you know, they've got, they're not obsessed with you, then, you know, or they've got insecurities. But I want my live streams to go out there to people, to help people. I want to help people. I want to help. Well, I just want to put the truth out there, but I want to help people as well. Because no one should ever in a million years have to go through what I've been through. So yeah, I mentioned Lisette, and you know, I thought that was interesting how she knew that what's the name at Clifton House. Yeah, just to finish off, but Juliet, my lady witness, is right that Christians do use the Bible for their own ends, for their own. There are Christians, a lot of them, sociopaths and covert narcissists, who use Christianity to get what they want. But this is why I never wanted to read the Bible and be friendly with other Christians, because they're self-righteous. It's like the police force with narcissism. You know, NPD in the police force. It's like Christians with self-righteousness. It's a disease. Narcissism in the police force is a disease. Self-righteousness is a disease in the church, in the Christian church. So I would not have wanted, but you know, Darren admitted that he upset people, and I can only imagine, because crumbs, he shooed me out of the door when I disagreed with him on the Bible. Or it was only something minute. I can't even remember what it was. But we were hardly even friends at the time. But he was sort of I don't know what the word is, but they didn't want him to come back to his church group anymore because he got stuck on something in a group talk, and people were disagreeing with him. But, I came round to Darren's way of thinking because I thought he's got a point about the name of Yahweh. So why did he then tell Gurmit, who he's also been unpleasant with, and asked her if she would marry him the way he did with me, telling her that I brought him to the name of Yahweh? Why? Tell the truth, Darren, because your time is up anyway. You can't manipulate people anymore. It doesn't work anymore. It's over. It's game over. I'm just saying to people, though, if you're in a relationship with someone, or you know someone that you think might be a narcissist or a sociopath, do not make excuses. It's very easy for me to say because I've done it so many times myself. There is no excuse, no label. It's such a westernized thing. In our culture, we use every label under the sun to excuse someone's abuse. There is no excuse in a court of law. Cause no loss, harm, or injury. And a person's disability is not an excuse to abuse someone else. Right, I've said it all, but people will get worse with old age, believe me. And there's nothing worse than an elderly narcissist, let me tell you that. The older they get, the more miserable, bitter, and just vile. Trust me, I've seen it all. And I want to nip it in the bud now. So keep strong. Yeah, keep strong, keep going. Do not take any more of the bullshit. Yeah. I'm going to get that blown up, by the way, when I go out on the street. And my voice will be amplified about all the things I expose. Over and out.